Hello everybody, this is Niclas Huschenbeth and today I would like to show you the game Anatoly Karpov against Garry Kasparov from the Linares Super Tournament 1993. Alright, let's get to it. Before we begin, as always, you guys know the drill, the comment of the day, and the comment of the day is by Ginger Guy, and he says, that Ginger Guy I should say, thank you for the videos, not just for a great chess analysis, but also as an English speaker learning German, they serve as a great way to practice. Viel Erfolg. Well, thank you, Ginger Guy, vielen Dank, and happy to hear your feedback. Now let's get to the game. Karpov with the white pieces, and he started out with one d4, knight f6, and Garry Kasparov goes for his beloved King's Indian, which he used to play more when he was younger, but in this game he played it, and we see a Saemisch Variation here, c6, queen d2, knight bd7, and rook d1 is rather unusual. The two main moves are d5 and queenside castle here. Rook d1, now black goes a6, preparing b5 for the future. D takes e5, knight takes e5, b3, and white has set up this Morochi structure now, controlling the d5 break fairly well with the pawns on e4 and c4, but the problem for white is here that his king is still in the center and he needs 3 moves to castle. He needs to move this one, and then he can castle. So what does that mean? In such situations, when the opponent's king is still in the center, you want to try to open up the game as fast as possible, open files, open diagonals against the opponent's king, and this is what Kasparov tries to do here by playing b5. And here Karpov makes a mistake, and this is also the cause for his problems later on in this game. He takes on b5 and opens up for black the a file for the black rook, and the rook can swing into action later on, as we'll see. Instead, he should have just taken on d6 right away. If now knight fd7 as it was played in the game, this wouldn't be any good for black because white can go f4, and if b4 as in the game, then white can just play knight a4 here, and we'll see the difference in a moment why this doesn't work well with the rook being able to swing into action. So instead of knight fd7, at this point black would need to go queen takes d6, takes, b takes c4, and now white can, for example, go knight a4, and the position is roughly equal, but this would have suited Karpov's playing style much more than what happened in the game for sure. So let's see the game. Karpov took on b5, a takes b5, the a file opens up for the rook, and now he takes on d6. But now black isn't exchanging queens, he plays knight f to d7, also further opening up this diagonal for the bishop. And here Karpov plays a mistake. But this position, practically speaking, is already difficult. Might be still around equal, but very hard to play for white over the board and much easier to play for black. And this is always an important practical point to consider. The best move would be to go h4 here. In fact, to rattle up some counterplay on the king side by going h5, maybe opening up the file for the rook. Nonetheless, I would definitely prefer black here. Karpov goes f4, but this is weakening the pawn on e4, giving black some squares, for example, a square on g4, and now white is in serious trouble. Strong reply here by Kasparov. He ignores the threat to the knight, he just goes b4, and Karpov decided to go to b1. This already tells you something has gone terribly wrong. Well, what else could he do? If he takes on b4, then black has this strong move, c5, And the point is that after queen b5, bishop a6, the queen pretty much has nowhere to go anymore, and black is winning. And if bishop takes c5, then black can just take back, because he has this fork available on c5. For example, rook takes d8. Black doesn't take back the rook, but just plays check, or better, this one, and is winning back the queen, and then is up a full piece. So completely winning here. And if in this position, white's best choice is to take the knight on e5, but black still goes knight d3 and is up a full exchange here. And with the king still being stuck in the center, this is winning for black. So queen takes b4 is no good. Knight a4, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Now we see the difference. Now, with no pawn on the a file blocking the rook, black can go rook takes a4, b takes, and knight c4. Queen d3 has to be played to protect the bishop, and now knight b2, black will at least win back the exchange and is also doing very well here. Last but not least, f takes e5. That was definitely another move, but now black just takes on c3. He's ready to take back on e5 with the bishop, and this also looks pretty dim, but maybe white's best choice nonetheless. Tough position already to play for white, and only after 50 moves. That's how quick sometimes things can go wrong against the King's Indian. So knight b1 was played, move you really don't want to make as white. Now knight g4, going for the bishop on e3. White goes bishop d4. He gets rid of the so strong King's Indian dark square bishop, but nonetheless his position is very bad because his king is still stuck in the center, and white is not even up material. Black has just won back the pawn. He brings his rook into action, the rook very strong in the second rank. This position is lost at this point for white already after only 17 moves. h3, c5, the queen goes back to g1, knight back to f6, e5, knight comes back into action with knight e4, h4 to get the rook into a game, but this is just too slow. And nice move here by Kasparov, going c4, and he wants to open up more files. If white was to take on c4, then the queen would come to a5 with devastating effect. So Karpov played knight c1, and this is just such a picturesque situation with pretty much all, well, not pretty much, all the white pieces except for the pawns stuck on the first rank, and this is not a good sign. If you are at move 20 and all your pieces are on the last rank, on the first rank, it's not a good sign, and of course white is completely lost here. So what happened just a move ago? Kasparov ignored the threat to his rook and he simply played calmly the pawn forward to c3. Very nice. The point is that after knight takes a2, black is able to fork rook and knight, and his attack continues even without the rook on a2. Karpov played queen d4. What happens if the rook sidesteps to c1? Then black has this very strong move, knight takes e5. The point is if white takes back, now black queens and then gives a checkmate on d2. So what else can white do? He can bring the queen back to e3, but now black takes on b1 and goes knight to g4, and after queen takes e4, pins and wins the queen, and his attack still continues. So this is winning. And after rook takes c2 at this point, black can go bishop g4, threaten checkmate on d1, and after bishop e2, just go knight d3 check, takes, the queen comes into action, the rook can also come into action, all black pieces are attacking, and white is pretty much playing without his rook on h1, and he cannot defend his position. It's mate in 6 already. So instead of going rook c1, Karpov opted for queen d4, And now something curious happened, as Kasparov writes in his annotated games book, third collection. Not exactly sure of the title, but I'll figure it out until this video is published, so you can see a link in the description. And he says this: when I push his pawn to d1, I said queen, but since there wasn't a second black queen around, as obviously the queen is already here, I left a pawn on the board and waited for arbiters to bring another queen to me. But Karpov just ignored the pawn on d1 and tried to take another piece, probably the one on e4. And then Kasparov said, but you're in check. But there was still only the pawn on d1. And Karpov said, where? I don't see a check. This could also be a bishop on d1. So ultimately, what happened was actually the arbiters first misunderstood and brought a white queen. But of course that didn't help. But ultimately, in the end, Karpov got some extra time. But it didn't matter at all at this point. Just a funny occurrence. Of course, Kasparov promoted to queen here, and white has to take. Or as Kasparov said, he could have also promoted to rook, as already one rook was taken, wouldn't have made a difference. But okay, he promoted to queen, and white took, and now knight dc5. This might look odd at first, that black is exchanging queens, being a pawn down at the moment, but as we'll soon see, the attack continues even in the endgame, and after knight f2, actually Karpov resigned already, as the rook is attacked, and black's ready to bring the bishop to f5 with check. So if you, for example, play rook g1, then bishop f5 check, and that's it. If king c1, then rook d1 check and rook takes b1. And if king b2, this is actually very cute, checkmate, knight d1, king a1, and the king is checkmated in the corner on a1 by the knight. So Karpov resigned after knight f2, 27 moves. Karpov was pretty much lost already after, let's say, 50 moves with the white pieces. So I consider this to be the most crushing win Kasparov had over his longtime rival Karpov, the world champion who preceded Kasparov. And this was indeed a wonderful King's Indian attacking game here by Kasparov. So let me know what you think about this game, and if you have any suggestions for future videos of games that I should cover. And that's it from me. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.